this cannot stand, Will. The banks are doing things that just can't sustain themselves. Mm-hmm. And if the bank needs negative interest rates, then could that be to sustain their bond carry trade? Mm-hmm. Does that mean that they'll be shorting on the negative interest rate side? Receiving money? It gets kind of weird when you talk about the spread. What is the spread? Between what and what? Is the lower end negative suddenly on the spread? I don't know.
Up and down.
Gets very messy.
Yeah.
But it cannot sustain itself. And by that I mean it's not going to last long. Mm-hmm. In other words, the banks are going to fail. And they're talking about this precisely at a time when the oil hedges are coming off. By that I mean you're having expiration of big oil hedge contracts for the big energy firms. And Standard & Poor's this week, announced a downgrade of 10 major U.S.-based oil companies.
Wow.
So we're going to be seeing some energy companies fail. Mm-hmm. They will not fail alone. Mm-hmm. They will fail with their favorite banks.
A little bit of, can we say, leverage?
Well, there's an old saying that when a bank has a giant lending partner, it really is a commercial partner and not a client. Mm-hmm. They go down together. They make money together or they go down together. Mm-hmm. I think we're at a critical point with these banks where the banks say to their client, we've been lending you money to make your debt service payments for the last 4 or 5 months, and we're not going to do it anymore because we don't see you getting out of this. We're going to limit how much we will default on.
Mm-hmm. Cut the losses.
Pardon me?
Cut the losses.
Cut the losses. Minimize the losses. Not add to the losses. Mm-hmm. Not compound the losses. Because all those bridge loans to make the debt service payments, they'll never see that money again. Right. And the banks are realizing that now as the hedges are coming off. I've explained what that means, the hedges coming off. Quickly, it means that a company like, say, Baker Hughes, that once was selling oil at $90 a barrel and was making money off that, they would sell forward on $95 per barrel. And they put out 18 months into the future contracts that they would not risk like in a casino, but put out there on the table and deliver into. Mm-hmm. So their output for the next 18 months was paid in advance by these contracts. So they locked in on the future, that $90 or $95 oil price. Okay, those are expiring now. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys, I call him George of the Comex in my gang, he's all over that. He said back in November and December, Jim, they're going to expire in January, February, and March. Well, we're in January, and poof, there's the S&P downgrade of 10 U.S.-based big energy companies. And in the article, they mention expiring oil hedges. Mm-hmm. So I try to be ahead of these things, and it's not my giant brain, it's my giant group. Sorry about that. I live near a boulevard.
That's okay, buddy.
Hey, Costa Ricans, they love to lay on a horn. It's so funny. You'd see 10 cars in a row, and they're not moving, but there's a taxi deep in the line, and he's just laying on his horn. I might walk by or ride by on my bike and say, Chaosis, what are you doing? And he just smiles and hits the horn again. He gives an ugly face.
Just making noise.
Anyway, that's the long horn here. So, gosh, Will, we have so many moving parts now, and they're all ugly. They're all ugly. You got the big mining firms, they can't make any money. Mm-hmm. So they're making what they call they're shutting down a marginal mine, mothballing a mine. Mm-hmm. If you think these mines can come back, this is a point on the rising gold price. Mm-hmm. If you think a mine that has been shut down, just imagine you have 500 people working in a mine, a big hole in the ground with 7, 10, a dozen layers where the trucks, climb.
Mm-hmm.
If you think that closed mine can come back in 30 or 60 days to be productive, you're dead wrong. Mm-hmm. I have a couple of clients who tell me about what had to be done in the Northwest Territory of Canada. Okay, they got the Yukon Territory and the Northwest Territories, and they both are big gold producers. Well, there's some Canadian laws that have to be complied with, and he told me they're spending a huge amount of money to seal the mines. I said, what kind of money are they spent? Well, like $1 billion to both take care of removal of the equipment and liquidating them, selling them for a loss, mm-hmm. and sealing the mine so they don't contaminate the nearby river.
Wow.
And I said to him, how long would it take to bring that mine in the Northwest Territories into productive mode? And he said, 1.5 years minimum. Wow. But you probably never see it unless we're way over 2,000 in the gold price. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's your indication. These mines cannot be reopened quickly in response to a rising gold price. First, because the mining companies will not conclude, well, we're above 2,000 and we're going to stay there. Mm-hmm. Second, they need to see it above and stably above, like for 1.5 years above mm-hmm. 2,000. And the second reason is, it just costs a lot of money to even open it, not produce, just to open it. Mm-hmm. These are environmentally messy. Oh boy. So, when you see the gold price go over 2,000, I mean, I tell people, wake me up when we're over 1,350. Because they say, Jim, we're approaching 1,200. And I say, I couldn't give a shit. Wake me up when we're over 1,350. Because you're going to start to see some mines that are not sealed shut. You're going to see some of them that are marginally and just, in mothballs, not sealed shut. Mm-hmm. They're going to come back. They're going to come back quickly, like in a month or two. They've got to hire the people. That's not a simple, quick process that takes a week either. Mm-hmm. They got to get the manpower. They got to move the equipment in. Mm-hmm. They got to put it in place in the mine. This is open pit versus, shafted tunnel system. There are all kinds of different mines that are at work. Okay, when you see the price of gold get up towards, say, 1,700, you're going to see some mines reopen. It's just not going to be enough to meet demand. So there's going to be a time lag for the supply to catch up. Mm-hmm. That's how you get to 5,000. Mm-hmm. Struggling to get to equilibrium. You're going to have to pry loose some of the gold holdings from people who are waiting for the 2,000 price. Mm-hmm. They're not going to sell everything they have. They're going to sell a portion. And they're going to wait. And they're going to say, well, it's 2,100 now, but maybe I can get 2,250. I'm holding out for 2,250. It didn't happen. They sold, say, 10% of what they've got. And they're hanging on to the majority. Mm-hmm. This is how the price just really takes off in the future months. And if you're looking for triggers, look no further than the Chinese. They're doing two things. They're taking control of the London gold fix. It's going to be called the Shanghai gold fix. And they're also going to be offering, and it's already starting, the Shanghai gold futures contract priced in the RMB currency. Mm-hmm. They're going to be taking control. They're not in a hurry like you are.
Right.
They're Chinese. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make them dumb. It makes them patient.
Yep.
We're a very impatient Western society. There's a joke about Westerners. They check their portfolio every hour. The Chinese don't. They make a plan for taking control of the gold industry. And they've got the biggest producing output of any country in the world right now. Mm-hmm. I'd like to mention one little funny fact that The Voice cited a few months ago. I asked a question. You know, I don't always ask really smart questions, Will. I may sound like I've got a lot of answers, but here's one question that I asked her. I don't mind exposing my ignorance at times because I don't have it all down. I asked over a year ago, why on earth is South Africa in the BRICS? They don't offer anything. What do they have? Good rugby team? Dancing Zulus? I don't know. What do they offer?
Gold, right?
Gold. The voice said, Jim, it's a lot more than the gold mines. And that was his initial answer. I said, a lot more than the gold mine. Okay, so the Chinese eventually want to control the traffic or the operations of the South African gold mines. And then I got flack coming back from the 8 or 10 South African clients that I have, Union of South Africa. And they said, no, the Chinese will never own our big, giant gold mining companies. And I said, okay, fine. They'll just control the output. Yeah. They'll be buying all the output. And that could be. But then several months ago, the voice made a comment. He said, Jim, in keeping with your query from several months ago about South Africa, China wants the South African output from their mines, to be sure. And they'll come back online, and maybe they're deeper, and maybe they're narrower, and maybe they're lower yield nowadays. But don't worry. The South African mine output will return. But, Jim, there's something you need to be aware of. It's called the Rand Refinery. Mm. Now, I did some checking several years ago. I think it was around 2007. Did you know that the South African language for a mountain ridge, R-I-D-G-E, is Rand? So they named their currency after the mountain ridges that produces the gold. Mm-hmm. So the mountain ridge is their Rand. Mm-hmm. So the Rand Refinery, the voice said, he said, Jim, an anomaly has come. You should alert your clients in the Hetrick letter. He does that often. And I do, and it's good information to include. He said the Rand Refinery has tripled its output of refined bars of gold in the last 4 or 5 years, during which time the South African mines are down 65 or more percent in output.
Wow, where's the gold coming from? So the Congo. So the Chinese are taking Congo gold and refining it using the fantastic refining capabilities of South Africa.
Right, and buying them in Dubai.
Interesting.
So you got a Congo, South Africa, Dubai, Shanghai connection. Mm-hmm. Okay. I went further, and he made a comment. You know, he loves to just throw something on the table, and we go, wow. Okay, here was his comment. He said, take a look at this map. And it was Congo and its landmass, including all of Western Europe. Just Congo. Now, I don't want to get into all the different names, you know, the Democratic Republic of Congo. I don't care what it's called. It's Congo, okay?
Right.
It's a mess. It was the Belgian Congo for a while, where the Belgians assassinated all the leaders in order to get the big mining contracts and get cheaper supply of a lot of metals. Uh-huh. Murder's good business. You don't haul on stage into court the British mining executives who ordered the murder of the Congolese ministers. There was a good movie. I just cannot remember who starred in the movie. It was about 2 years ago. It was an assassination in Congo, ordered by a London-based mining company. Assassination of the mining minister in Congo, in order to get a more favorable contract. And they did. I can't remember who starred in it. I'll find out when I hang up. I'll do a little web search. But anyway, the point was Congo's landmass is gigantic. Africa's landmass is gigantic. If you just take sub-Saharan Africa, it's gigantic. So I started to make a query with the Voice. It's not they call it the distressed zone of Africa, the distressed nations. That's Congo and the others, Congo et al. So I started wondering, who are the other countries? Well, it's Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and a couple of others. It's about 5 countries. They're all good size. And one thing that the Voice will not answer is, what's the output in tonnage per year from, say, 5 countries in the southern part of Africa? All I hear is, well, Congo might be around 1,000 tons a year. Compare that with China. What are they, 250? So Congo's 4 times China, and we call China the leading producer in the world? Congo's 4 times China, the leading producer in the world?
Interesting.
In other words, China's not the leading producer in the world. And you can probably get 3 different African countries that are all bigger than China, and China's buying their output.
Wow. The movie,
it's going through the Rand refinery.
Interesting. The movie is The Gunman with Sean Penn.
Sean Penn was a gunman, yes.
The Gunman, a sniper on a mercenary assassination team, kills the Minister of Mines of the Congo.
Do they put a year in there? I got the impression it was like the 80s or 90s.
Well, this one is 2015. Now they're
No. I mean the
sorry.
timing of the movie itself.
Not in this little summary I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
No.
Well, thanks for that. It fortifies my message. Okay, why did they have a movie about assassination of Congo mining ministers?
Right.
Because there's something going on, Will. Take a look at the nature of some movies, not all. I mean, forget the Zero Dark 30 from 2 years ago about the mythical bullshit of killing Osama bin Laden. Total bullshit. There are movies out now that are like exposés.
What was the one I saw the other day? It was an X-Files. I saw it up on SGT. I think he had something about the X-Files, new season in the first episode, I guess, was like off the charts. I mean, just incredibly symbolic with what it was.
Yeah, I'm a little bothered by the X-Files that came out. Did they fail to include anything in that? No, what they did was a blitz. They had 15 different factors in there. Just they wanted to blow your mind.
Right.
It wasn't an exposure.
Right.
It was a blitz to knock you flat.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't include that in the same category as the Sean Penn movie. Sean Penn will not be in a movie unless it's a lot of fun or it has a real message. He's just a real maverick. He turned down an Oscar for his movie about the Mystic Massachusetts kidnapping. Mystic Connecticut. Anyway, it was about kidnapping in New England. He and Timothy Robbins were in the movie, and he got an Oscar, and he didn't want it. So that's kind of like what, the guy who played Patton, what was the name of him? His son is named Campbell. Anyway, whatever. So a lot of moving parts, Will. I'm rambling here, but I'm trying to make some good points. We're at a point now where a lot of exposures are going to happen. And it's not just going to be Putin and the Kremlin with 9/11 exposures. It's going to be a whole lot more. It's going to be very embarrassing stuff for people like the Clintons, the Bushes, the Rothschilds. Like the people who did 9/11.
Couldn't happen to a nicer group.
Yeah, well, I heard from The Voice a very strange claim I don't doubt it. When I say claim, I don't mean to impugn him in any way or to make it sound like, well, it was kind of cockeyed. No, he made a claim. These are things that are next to impossible to verify. But he said, this was back in the middle of 2015, he said 90% of the players within the banker cartel, the banker cabal, 90% of them have signed the accord, the agreement with the White Dragons and the powers in the East to stop the destruction of the earth, to stop the gigantic trillion-dollar bond frauds, and to stop the killer vaccines. And it wasn't long after that the Ebola stopped. Ebola is a killer vaccine designed to kill for any idiot who's willing to take the vaccine. I warned a family. I was close to a woman in 2008. I warned her aunts. I told her, all your kids, refuse the swine flu vaccine. But Jim, you don't understand. It's recommended by the schools. I said, refuse. Is it mandatory? No. I said, then refuse. You'll know why in 2 or 3 years. And my gal had to convince him, Jim knows what he's talking about, which is difficult because I only knew her for 2 years. And the mothers and aunts, they didn't know me much. All they knew was that I took their little kids to a movie and let them climb on my back. You know, a little 8-year-old, 9-year-old climbing on my back and, you know, hanging on me. Four kids hanging on the jackass as I'm walking. It's a funny sight. But here's what I'm leading to. Only one little girl took the vaccine, and she has a mysterious brain disease. I told my gal to tell that other aunt who lives 40 miles from San Jose and just didn't get the word, tell her that it's probably the Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's very conveniently put in with the other poisons in the swine flu vaccine. But Jim, it's a vaccine. It's supposed to prevent. I said, no, it's a vaccine that is laced with poison to infect.
Yep.
For people who are too dumb and trusting to suspect that the authorities would want to kill them. Well, so the little girl, I did a check, a follow-up a year later. I said, how's the little girl out in San Ramon doing? Well, she's been out of school for 5 years, and she'll never have a normal life. Mm-hmm. She's now about 16, and she drools down the side of her mouth and is out of school. Okay, this is what you get for taking the vaccines, people.
Yeah, this is a really, I mean, I have young children. This one is really a difficult one for me, and it's been a cause of much debate over the last several years with friends and family and everything else. It's the current fraud that is the vaccine industry is so unbelievably powerful and potent. I mean, the fact that it has bought and paid for and propagandized an entire medical industry. I mean, you have doctors who actually believe this shit, that a child under the age of 24 months. I mean, do you know what the current vaccine schedules are, Jim? They are criminal. I mean, when I was a kid, I maybe had 10 or a dozen vaccines before, total. Now the schedule is, it's like 50 or 60 by the time they're 18 months old, and it's another 20 on top of that by the time they're 24 months. And I might be off a little bit, but it's absurd. It's it's absurd. I have a client, actually, who this came up in conversation recently, and she said, well, you might be surprised to learn that I'm actually vaccine damaged. She was at her getting a checkup with her doctor, several years ago, and the doctor said, well, have you had your vaccine? And she said, no, what are you talking about? I'm a healthy adult. Why do I need a vaccine? People aren't dying of polio. What are you talking about? Well, he talked her into getting a DTaP, which is one of those 3-in-1 vaccines. Anyway, she developed days later, about malfunction in her neck. neurological breakdown in her neck, and she has to get Botox injections. And anyway, it's so unbelievable. I mean, it's sickeningly unbelievable.
I have two stories, Will, to go with yours. One has to do with Africa. In Ghana, Sierra Leone, there's a giant laboratory owned by Soros and Bill Gates of Microsoft. Mm-hmm. And it was to develop more and more of these laced Ebola vaccines. Yep. By laced, I mean contaminated. They're not to prevent, they are to infect.
Right.
The laced Ebola vaccines. And what they found, they had to shut down some of their operations because the natives were murdering the Red Cross workers. Mm-hmm. After they noticed that the only sick people were those who were vaccinated.
Yep.
They're murdering the Red Cross.
Wow.
In Western Africa. And it wasn't one country. It was three. Ghana, Sierra Leone, and one other I cannot remember. I think it might have been Niger, or I don't know. Okay, the other story I have is that it's the murder of the holistic doctors in the southern U.S.
Yeah.
They discovered a cure for cancer, including advanced cancer. Mm-hmm. It was to give a jet assist to the microphage. That's microphage production. Mm-hmm. Macrophages are kind of like super antibodies. And if you're really sick, your macrophages will come in and attack the external agent and kill it.
Right.
If you have cancer, the same macrophages will attack the cancerous region and render it healthy in much the same way it attacks viruses and bacteria. That was one thing they learned. But they also learned that the vaccines were laced with inhibitors of your macrophage production. Mm-hmm. And 8 or 10 of them were murdered.
Yep. This was all within a 6-month time frame or something too. I mean, there were.
It was last August and September.
Yeah.
8 of them were found dead, and the police, in one case, found a Georgia doctor with a shotgun wound in his chest, lying face down, and they called it suicide without any investigation. What did these 10 or 12 doctors have in common? 2 things. They're all working and publishing on the results of how vaccines are laced.
Yep.
Not with the poisons, not with the infections, but also, not just, but also with inhibitors to your immune system. Mm-hmm. In other words, to make you a good pharmaceutical company customer.
Yeah.
But they also had something else in common. One day before their murder or disappearance, they all had a visit from the FBI.
Really?
Now, here's how I got very emotionally wrapped up in this. I've had a debate with my own father for a 2-year period that the U.S. cancer industry is a profit center, not a cure center. Mm-hmm. They ban cures. They ban good, successful treatment. They keep going, the constant treatment all the way to your extended death.
Yep.
It's very profitable, and it's about $70,000 for a treatment per year. And here's where it gets ugly, uglier than what it's already been. $70,000 in treatment. How much do you think it costs Big Pharma to produce the post-chemotherapy treatments? $7,000. I need notes in front of me here. I'm all going extemporaneous here. $70,000 for treatment. It costs them $70 to make the drugs.
Wow.
It's a 1,000-fold markup. Now, when I lost a job in 1993, I actually interviewed with AstraZeneca for a job as a clinical trial statistician. Mm-hmm. And in the course of the interview, I asked them, what's the profit margin on your drugs?
Oh.
And they said, well, some of it's a well-kept secret, but we will tell you in general that, most of American industry has like a 25 or 30% profit margin, but we have about an 80% profit margin because we must fund our research.
Yeah.
There's a lot more research involved in pharmaceutical production than there is in selling garden equipment or tools at Home Depot.
And they propagandize.
Okay.
And they propagandize that all the way into, I remember learning that specifically in economics in some form of study,
Well, okay, here's my point. My point, though, is AstraZeneca admitted that they had an 80% profit margin.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means 8 parts profit, 2 part cost, 4 to 1. The example I gave of the cancer treatment was 1,000 to 1.
Right.
They don't want you to be cured. And I put that in my September Hattrick letter report. And I did not expect the response that I got. Jim, I am a professional in something field that's not medical, but I was working with all their data systems at the John Wayne Cancer Institute in Southern California. And one day I was dealing with a problem with, lost data, and we recovered it. But in the course of going into the oncologist's office, I noticed that there were a series of photos on his wall. And I said to the doctor, that looks like skin cancer. What does this mean? W1, W2, W3. I see by W7 that it's almost all cleared up. He said, those are weeks. Oh, you mean there's a cancer cure for skin cancer that does the job in 7 weeks? And he said, yes. Well, then why are we doing Dr. Vax's protocol for cancer treatment over several months without a cure? And the Japanese doctor working at the John Wayne Cancer Institute in Southern California smiled at this client of mine and said, you haven't been around long enough. There's no money in cancer cure. There's only money to be gained in cancer treatment. This is for one of our staff members.
Wow.
And the guy said, 1 month later, the Japanese guy left the United States disgusted. There's no permitted cancer cures in the United States. I know a guy who knows 2 doctors who've had their offices burned down. He also knows somebody who had a patient who died, and the government of the United States charged him with murder just so he'd stop doing the cancer cures. And I've asked around, what are some of the common pieces to cancer cure that are, not real hush-hush? And he said, Jim, it's easy. You eliminate all carbohydrates from your diet. Eliminate tea and your sugar and coffee. Stop eating bread. Yeah. Don't eat crackers. Don't eat pasta, linguine, spaghetti. Don't eat rice, any kind of rice. Don't eat carbohydrates. And I said, well, how are you going to get your energy supply? And he said, don't worry about it. You'll burn your fat, you'll lose a little weight, and you'll always get a little bit of carbohydrates, like in natural juices.
Right, fruit, yeah.
Vegetables, you'll get some carbohydrates.
Well, I've always heard that an alkaline environment, that cancer cannot exist. So one cancer, at home cancer remedy is rid your body of all acidity and just eat kale and high alkaline foods like crazy.
Like raisins too. I eat raisins.
Yeah?
I eat them almost every day.
My kid loves raisins.
I eat a bowl of oatmeal with milk honey and raisins, and I don't heat it up.
Yeah, I told you, I quit. I never liked the microwave. It always kind of freaked me out, so I never was a big fan and didn't use it much. But a couple of years ago, you got me off of the microwave. I mean, I haven't used a microwave in a couple of years.
I stopped in January of 15. I wish I'd stopped earlier, but I really didn't use it much. I used it some. Now it's sitting in a closet with old socks on it.
Yeah. Ours is mounted into the wall, so there's not much.
I had a hard time, Will, knowing that if it blew up some aluminum foil, what's it doing at the molecular level?
Right.
I mean, I just make simple comparisons like that. But
if it's causing...
I learned from one of my clients. It's a fellow PhD at Carnegie Mellon. He's visited me twice. He's a really nice guy. I don't want to give away his identity, but he's a real smart guy. He's not in the statistics field. He's in a scientific engineering field. And he visited me on the second time. He visited and said, "Jim, what do you know about water?" And I said, "Well, it's a staple of life. You can't have it without it. You can't have life without it." And I think that, and I made a joke. I said, "I think extraterrestrials are here because we've got a lot of water on planet Earth." And he said, "Well, that could very well be. But are you aware that no two bodies of water are alike?" And I said, "No, tell me more." And he said, "Water can be disorganized. Water cannot be in its proper lattice structured system." And I said, "Well, that's interesting." And he said, "Yeah, if you drink good water, you will have a healthier body and healthier internal metabolic processes." And he went on to say some other things that are a little bit unusual, but he told me this, that there have been some experiments recently on water. Microwave your water, heat it up, cool it off, and feed your plants that water. It kills all your plants in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you remember if you have to microwave it, do you have to heat it to the point of boiling? Because I've also read something that water, once you've boiled it, like if you use a tea kettle and you make tea, once water's been boiled, don't reboil it. In other words, dump it out, and put fresh water in to boil a new batch. Because once it's been boiled, there's something that that takes place.
I think it loses its lattice structure.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on to say, "Jim, you need to study water more, and you might want to study salts more."
Mm-hmm.
And just coincidentally, a month later, a fellow who lives in suburban San Jose, who's not a client, said, "Jim, I'd like to meet with you. I got a business, and I'm well read in certain areas, and let me just take you out for lunch." Mm-hmm. So I let him buy me a lasagna with chicken at a little restaurant, and he gave me a bottle of pink salts.
Good stuff.
From
Himalaya.
The Himalayas.
Yeah.
And now I find that my gal steals it. She said, "Jim, I want more of that." I take it once in a while. I don't take it enough. I'm the kind of guy who does some of the things I know are good, but I just don't do them enough. Yeah. So I'm going to age just from not doing it enough. But I take some other things like DHEA, and I had a wonderful thing happen to me just a few weeks ago. During Christmas, some woman was helping me to buy a shirt as a present, and a woman's shirt. And we just got talking a little bit, and it wasn't a flirting incident, but she was just a nice woman, and she was bored because there was almost nobody in the store, between Christmas and New Year's. And she said, "Who's this for?" And I said, "Well, it's for a woman I know." And I joke. I say, "It's for my mother." And they say, "Well, wait a minute. How old's your mother?" I say, "Well, my mother's actually dead. She's gone." "No, it's for a woman I know." And then they say, "How long you been in Costa Rica?" I say, 9 years. "And how old is your girlfriend?" And I say, "Oh, she's about 30. "Oh, well, that's nice. What are you, about 50? And I say, "Well, how old do you think I am?" No, really, just no games. Don't flatter me or anything. This is all in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
how old do you think I am? So she looks at me, and I make sure that she sees my dome without a whole lot of hair on it. And she said, 52. And here's what really cracked me up. I said, no, you're off. And she said, really? 48. She went the other direction. I said, I'm 63. And she said, no. So I pulled out my driver's license. And she said, wow, but this could be false. So I pulled out a copy of my passport. And she said, wow, 63 and a half? You look 52. I said, no, I look 48. But I think it's no smoking, no drinking. I don't get carcinogens. Maybe bus exhaust, but I try to ride my bike, and when I'm moving around, I go on the back streets, the little parallel streets I call them, and go through parks. I avoid most traffic, not all, but don't smoke, don't drink, no drugs, good air, take vitamins. But Groucho Marx got it right. Will, you're as young as a woman you feel.
It's all relative, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, buddy, I think maybe on that note we'll call it a day.
Yeah, I suppose.
I always do love having you on. Your information is amazing. The hat trick letter. We'll of course have links and everything, but you guys check out thegoldenjackass.com and Jim's writing of the hat trick letter. It's incredible information from him and his sources and his team. So, buddy, I certainly appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure being on, Will. Thanks for having me. And we did one back in the middle of January, I think, and it just seemed like a long time since I had talked with you. So I'm glad we hooked up again. And there's so much happening. This is going to be a year of accelerating events and disclosures, events toward the breakdown of the economic and financial system and toward lost control by the dollar within the system. There's a lot of joking going on among major nations of the world that the United States still believes they're in control. And we're just going to see markets and economies and patterns and rules and regulations and customs, they're all going to be changing. And it's changing all from under the feet of the Americans who believe in the king dollar. I call it the king dollar and the reign of terror.
Yeah.
We're having war to defend the dollar, and this is what I said would happen. I said this back in 2005 and 6. So when we're in a very late stage, we're going to be using violence and war to defend the dollar, and we're here now. So this is very late in the game. I'm looking forward to the positive revelations. I'd like to see 9/11 become very clear, done by the Bush family with the Mossad help.
Maybe they sprinkle a little JFK in there as well.
Yeah, well, boy, I tell you, I hear more and more different stories about JFK. There are a number. I think there were 5 reasons to get rid of him.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's another interview.
Yeah. Okay, pleasure being on, Will. Thanks for having me. And I know we got long-winded. I got long-winded, but hey, I think it's still pretty interesting.
Hey, I enjoyed it.
I get some compliments, Will. It's amazing. I get some compliments that say, Jim, you go over an hour, but it's still kind of interesting and gripping at times.
Well, we'll have to break this one into 2 just because of the clips get too big. You can't you can't load it all. So you can, at least it'll be a little more digestible. But I certainly enjoyed it, and I really do appreciate you, buddy.
Okay. All right. Thanks for having me on. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.